Welcome to Suits on Suits LA. We're Quinn and Jared Mayberry, brothers, lawyers, and your guides to Suits LA. On this show, we cover the legal concepts that come up on the show Suits. Today we're covering the second episode of Suits LA, titled Old Man Hanrahan. This episode wasn't just about entertainment law. It was about power, strategy, and playing the game within the game. Some of the most important legal battles don't happen in courtrooms. They happen in boardrooms, over drinks, and in high-stakes negotiations, where one wrong move can cost you everything. First up, let's get into how large corporations weaponize litigation. When a large studio threatens to litigate you into the ground, is that justice, or a case of deep pockets crushing the little guy? How often does this happen in real life? And what does it actually take to fight back? Faking evidence? Lying to get a confession? How far do lawyers really go to gain an advantage? And where's the line between smart strategy and outright deception? And finally, we can't ignore the brutal reality of law firm politics. Winning cases isn't always enough. Sometimes it's about signing clients and building business. Rick is betting his future on signing a big client, but is that how the game is actually played? So that's what's on the docket today.
In this episode, Warner Brothers is portrayed as using its deep pockets to litigate the producer into the ground. Does this really happen?
Yeah, it does. Whenever you see these asymmetric levels of power in litigation, or really financial resources in litigation, sometimes you get an abuse of the court system where the power, or rather the party with more resources, takes advantage of that.
Since you brought me something to read, I have something for you. See, we had Tina do a final pass on the script, and it ended up pushing Dylan's scene count from 5 to 40.
There's tons of discovery, and the saying, bury the other side in paperwork, can happen in practice.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Although in this case, it kind of feels like Warner Brothers is using its litigation power to make something right that otherwise wouldn't be made right.
Totally. In terms of using it as a tool, I guess that's all it is. It's just about any tool can be used for good or evil or something in between.
Yeah, it's all about leverage, it would seem.
Yeah, exactly. On that theme, I want to talk about enforcement. In my opinion, half the law is the rules and laws in place, and almost half of it is enforcement. So it seems like the law is on the producer's side here, but Warner Brothers is going to, ostensibly litigate them into the ground. How often in reality does enforcement of a contract become an issue?
I mean, it matters a lot. To take a claim all the way from pre-litigation, litigation, through trial into judgment could be years. Frankly, the decision that the humans are talking about and deciding over could be well in the past by the time you get to a judgment phase.
That makes sense. And so it's like the dynamic that they portrayed with all this gamesmanship feels fairly accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on top of it, you'd have to kind of think, where is the body positioning at the time of the trial, right? If the money's in someone's pocket, it could take years to get it out of their pocket, and they can use that to their advantage in the litigation.
And then settle for some fraction of the total value.
Exactly, because it's hard to disgorge them of those dollars. I guess with that, and is the legal system really designed to favor the party that can take the litigation to the extreme?
Whether or not it was designed that way, I would like to think it wasn't. In practice, that's oftentimes, again, how it plays out. There are various rules and mechanisms in place to try and prevent this. There are oftentimes motions for summary judgment early on in the process where you can have a court make a ruling before you go through an entire trial, but it's still after extensive discovery. There are things like anti-SLAPP lawsuits where it tries to prevent people from suing for defamation whenever they have tons of power and resources and somebody's trying to participate in public conversation. And there are also contingency fee lawyers who will take on cases for a percentage of the outcome, and the client doesn't have to pay anything up front. So there are various mechanisms by which the system as a whole has tried to level the playing field. But the reality of the situation is the party with more money and resources is going to be in a better position for litigation most of the time.
Yeah, it's not dispositive, but they have more leverage.
Yeah. And you have to have these things like contingency fee agreements to even make it possible to give lots of these plaintiffs a fight, for example.
Yeah. That makes sense.
All right, I want to talk about the ethics of lying and manipulation in legal strategy. This came up on the show, and I think it's something that comes up on a lot of shows.
You think that I don't want to know the truth? I don't know what you want. But the Ted I used to run with would know this is evidence.
Let me put it this way. I see why we have the reputation we have.
Yeah, so let me toss up, hopefully, a softball to you.
Yeah, please do.
Faking evidence, lying to get a confession. You know, how often do lawyers push the ethical boundaries?
It's all perfectly okay.
Exactly.
There's going to be a soundbite of that one day that I'm going to regret.
Yeah.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
Of course not. It's people push the boundaries, and there are some lawyers that are unethical.
Yeah.
That's the truth of any profession. This kind of behavior, for example, trumping up evidence as a prosecutor is the type of thing that would potentially get you, almost certainly get you disbarred and very likely get you thrown into prison. It's not the kind of thing that you'd take lightly.
No, agreed. I think actually the ethical rules and the enforcement of those ethical rules are taken very seriously in the legal profession. I also think most lawyers kind of view their duty as lawyers. They hold themselves in high esteem. And part of the reason is because of their ethical requirements.
Yeah, I think it's certainly something that's important to virtually all of the lawyers I know.
Yeah, I mean, you could go from having a career to not having one if you're disbarred.
Yeah.
So where's the line between aggressive negotiation and bad faith?
Yeah, like so many things in the law, it's hard to define a bright line.
Right.
As a general rule, you're thinking about things like intentional deception and outright lying.
Right.
I think as a rule of thumb, if you're framing your case in the best light possible, great, you're on the right side of this. Once you start introducing lies and intentional deception, I think you're likely going to have some problems.
Yeah, I would also add in intentional omissions.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Although you don't always have an obligation to.
That's true. It's a more complicated situation. But I do think if you have a duty to disclose and you omit, it becomes a problem.
Absolutely. All right, so whenever this does happen, though, whenever we see these deceptive practices in real life, how are attorneys held accountable?
I think we kind of touched on this already, but there's a professional code of conduct that every state bar has, and lawyers have to live up to them. Otherwise, they can be sanctioned, they can be put on probation, or they could be disbarred and lose their entire careers.
And is that something that actually happens?
It absolutely does. There's an entire kind of regime and enforcement mechanism for doing so, and people absolutely take that very seriously.
Better question, do you think that's something we're going to see happen on this show?
0% chance. Let's put it this way. It does not make for good TV.
All gas, no brakes.
Yeah.
I think that, that's kind of boring to watch. Yeah. So in a moment of rare generosity to my brother, I'll gas him up a little bit. So Jared's a partner at a big law firm, and I think the perfect person to answer the next set of questions.
Let's hear him.
So is bringing in a big client enough? Or is it, more about firm politics, your ability to do the work? What's at play here?
All of the above.
Yeah.
You have to, making it all the way from an associate to partner is such a marathon and a slog. You're not going to get there via one attribute. You could be better at one of the verticals than others, but you need to be good at all three.
And so whenever we see Rick sign this client and get this big promotion to head of entertainment, realistic?
I would say largely no, but I do think that it is important to realize a lot of people who are just making partner don't have a full-fledged practice. It's not like they're waiting until they get a full-fledged practice and then they make them partner. It's more about showing that you can do it when you get into that role.
And so this dynamic where Rick seems to be a great team player, a hard worker, generally well-liked, even if too much of a Boy Scout.
Yeah.
I find Rick kind of annoying, to be honest.
Agreed.
But generally well-liked, but he has this question mark. Can he sign clients? Maybe not totally unrealistic then for the firm leadership to want to see he can sign clients.
I actually think that's pretty spot on.
And so it's less about this one big client and more about like showing an aptitude to be able to do it.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah. And on top of that, I think a lot of people take they view it as maybe the opposite, where it's if you're really good at bringing in business, they'll make you partner just because you're really good at bringing in business. That's not enough either. You have to be very competent and good at your job.
Erica.
Exactly.
Yeah. Although I'm starting to love Erica on this show.
I totally agree. And
Yeah.
frankly, she's showing in no way was she incompetent in that outcome.
Did you remember the opening scene?
Just the woman I wanted to see.
Oh, I was going to say the same thing.
To who?
Your mom.
My mom passed away years ago.
We both thought the first episode was lacking a little comedy. The opening scene was great.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so as we're thinking about this marathon of a process,
Yep.
how much access do junior associates, or I guess like more senior associates broadly, and I'll put the question to you and let you qualify it as you see fit.
Sure.
How much access do associates have to partners or the firm leadership broadly?
Well, I think this is actually talking to your third prong, which is the politics of being in a law firm. It kind of just depends on how good you are at kind of convincing others that they should be invested in your career and that you're worthy of it.
What are some ways you might be able to do that?
Do really good work. No, but also be
Work really hard,
approachable.
yeah.
You know, if you're likable, that's going to be a huge benefit. If you make their lives easy, that's going to be super helpful. If you're likable, that's also going to go a long way.
I'm screwed.
Yeah, tell me about that.
I'm screwed all around.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that you've told us a little bit about how it actually plays out, do you think that it's the right balance, or do you think that, one of these, three prongs is overemphasized and there should be more weight placed on another?
No, I don't think so. I mean, and it kind of depends firm to firm, person to person, what's needed in the firm at the time that the person's up for partner. It's actually kind of a funny situation where, in a lot of ways, it's a 10-year body of work as you're going toward partner. But for the firm, it's a snapshot in time of what they need or think they need.
Okay, a bit of a one-off here, but whenever the firms split, we have Stewart's new firm, and then we have Black & Associates.
Yep.
Did you notice that new firm title?
I didn't. I missed that.
So I was left with the question, is Ted Black the only named partner at the firm, or is he the only partner, period, rather? He's clearly the only named partner.
Yeah, he's clearly the only named partner. He could be the only partner at the firm. You tend to find that more in kind of plaintiff side shops than in other practice areas where the benefit of the firm is that it's a platform for all of these partners to kind of work off of, versus in a plaintiff's firm or a trial-based firm, the named partner may be the literal star that brings the clients into the
So
firm.
possible it's Black & Associates
Could
and
be.
the head of entertainment is not even a partner at the firm.
It could be very possible.
Interesting.
You like movies and television, right?
Of course. What kind of entertainment lawyer wouldn't love... I'm more of a book girl myself.
So talking about entertainment law, the relative level of prestige amongst legal practices came up on this episode. Let's talk about prestige in the law. The idea of entertainment lawyers as glorified salesmen was thrown around. Is that accurate? Is that fair?
I mean, I don't think it's fair. I think that there are people in the industry that kind of laud the high stakes litigation, maybe some appellate litigation, the large transaction M&A practices as the kind of most prestigious, but and view some of these other kind of practice areas like entertainment as just kind of deal making. But, everyone has their skills.
I also think that there's something to how competitive it is to get into these industries. And it's not one-to-one, but there's a correlation between how competitive it is to get the job and how prestigious it's seen. And a lot of these entertainment law jobs are incredibly hard to get.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think entertainment may fall out of that general rubric.
Yeah.
And that's probably just because the sheer size is so small and people kind of want to be close to the action. I would guess that a similar situation would occur in kind of a sports related practice. People want to be near the industry, and so they're willing. So there's a lot of competition for a small number of jobs, and at the same time, people aren't necessarily considering it the most prestigious.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair pushback there. Anyways, I think being an entertainment lawyer seems incredibly cool.
I agree. Very cool. So that's maybe a microcosm of prestige in the law. What do lawyers think about it?
Plenty of lawyers put a lot of weight on that, and plenty of lawyers don't think about it at all. I think it's a little silly to take yourself too seriously. It just goes for anybody, lawyer or otherwise. But there's no doubt that as a general rule, attorneys would understand that it's a more prestigious job to be a Supreme Court litigator than it is to be somebody who works with individuals on a day-to-day basis. I personally think that, I mean, I'm biased. I work in people law. I work with everyday folks on a regular basis,
Right.
but that's the most rewarding type of work, in my opinion. And it's oftentimes not considered the most prestigious, far from it. So it's like all of these things, a little bit arbitrary and just it's going to vary from person to person. But what's your take on this?
Well, I think that lawyers are incredibly prestige hungry. I
Yeah.
mean, if you look on any kind of website bio, a guy who's graduated from law school 30 years ago may still include Order of Coif on his
Yeah.
on his bio, or
I plan on telling people I went to Harvard for the rest of my life.
or
I don't think about prestige at all, but
yeah, I know, not even a little bit, or put the clerkship that they had coming out of law school again 30 years ago.
yeah, it's like something that they did for maybe 9 months, 30 years ago.
And it's a stamp of approval. They're
Yeah.
still, it's a gold star they're still collecting today.
Yeah, well said. And that's better insight. All right. And so we've already kind of touched on it, but how does working as an entertainment lawyer vary from other types of law, like general corporate or general lit?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one because you're doing transactional work, but you're doing it for individuals who are so large that they can afford a lawyer to act as like
They're a
They're-
small corporation themselves. essentially.
exactly
Yeah.
right. So I think it's unique in that sense. It's also a lot about making deals within a very tight network and community, and so it may be more about knowing people and negotiating with them than it is about knowing the law.
I think that pretty much wraps up the trial. Let's move to the final verdict.
Ooh, you're going first.
Unlike Old Man Hanrahan, this episode had life. Better pacing, better jokes, better character development. I'm starting to think setting up the rival firms was a really smart move, and it drives the plot line. We just had to invest for an episode. We had to get through it.
Agreed.
A win all around.
Yeah, I think this episode was a lot better than the first one. I think they threw a lot at you in the first one, and it was an attempt to kind of set the stage. And this one just felt a lot more relaxed, a lot more comfortable. And with that, I think the audience enjoyment increased. So what did you think of Ted's appearance? Did you notice anything different?
He was looking good.
He definitely had a spray tan. His hair was a little more coiffed. It was almost like he was in the later stages of a sitcom.
Oh my God. Like the Always Sunny guys talk about it. It's like he got rich.
The actors got rich.
From episode 1 to 2, he got rich.
Yeah.
No, I thought that was good. I really like his outfits. I like his
Interesting.
black shirts.
Yeah, so you're liking the no tie, you know? Is this like a aspirational look?
Really liking the outfits is a stretch. What I do like is I like somebody who's put together no tie.
You know, the funny thing though is most guys in the law, when they're trying to look casual, cowboy boots. I don't see.
I don't think that's trying to look cowboy, or I don't think that's trying to look casual. I think that's trying to look justice.
That's trying to look justice, raw justice.
I'm absolutely going to get cowboy boots.
You're absolutely not.
I am.
You know, I did once hear from a friend that cowboy boots are to men as stilettos are to women.
Call me a stiletto boy because I'm getting me some boots.
Quinn's got the pumps.
Well, I think that's our episode. Let us know what you want to... Well, I guess you want to have a chance to let us know what you want to see because we're putting these out every week before the next episode.
You can't get rid of us.
If you have any questions from the prior week's episode, send us an email to talktothesuits@gmail.com and we'll try and address it on the following week's episode. But yeah, I think otherwise that covers it. Please like and subscribe. Does us a lot of good, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
See the